The Partnership for the Delaware Estuary presents its 2011 Science and Environmental Summit. This program was recorded January 31st, 2011 in Cape May, New Jersey. In this program, Green City, Clean Waters, with Christopher S. Crockett, Ph.D., Director of Planning and Research for the Philadelphia Water Department. At the lectern to introduce Dr. Crockett is Jennifer Adkins, Executive Director of the Partnership for the Delaware Estuary.
There are hundreds of municipalities in the Delaware Estuary study area. Largest and most populous among these is the city of Philadelphia. The Philadelphia Water Department is a core partner in the estuary program, has been one of our biggest partners in watershed protection and stormwater management outreach and education over the years, and is our lead sponsor for this year's summit. Under the leadership of Mayor Nutter and Office of Watersheds Director Howard Newkrug, who is recently appointed now as the new Water Commissioner, Philadelphia has become a national leader in stormwater management, among other things. Its Green City, Clean Waters program has not only won acclaim in the region and from the national environmental community, but has also been covered by the likes of Business Week, The Economist, and the Wall Street Journal. Here to tell us more about Green City, Clean Waters is Christopher Crockett, Director of Planning and Research at the Philadelphia Water Department. I've been fortunate to work directly with Chris on a number of efforts related to source water protection, and he is a passionate, tireless innovator when it comes to finding new and better ways to protect our precious water resources. So please join me in welcoming Chris Crockett from the Philadelphia Water Department.
Good morning. Howard Newkrug, our commissioner-to-be in 2 days, sends his regrets for not making it today to speak, but he starts his new job in 2 days, and they're already busy with the transition into the new job as water commissioner. I do want to thank you for having me here today, and I promise I will be done on time so that you can get lunch, because I don't want to stand between people and their lunch. So I'm sure many of you, I wanted to also add to Jen's comment today that Time Magazine also was speaking to the city about Green Cities, Clean Water, and that may be in Time Magazine in one of the upcoming issues as well. So the never-ending parade of media attention to green infrastructure continues. And what I want to do today is just give you a little perspective on what our Green City Clean Waters program is and what it is not. I think I've done this presentation, oh gosh, over 12 years, I don't know, 1 million times. And it always, some of you have probably seen versions of this, but I want to give you a different perspective on the presentation today that's a little different than the normal view that you would normally see. You would look at it just from a sole stormwater, stream runoff, stream protection, and water quality, estuary protection point of view. I want you to look at it more from a larger point of view, in terms of social improvement, economic improvement, and overall sustainability, and how that fits into a larger program for a city. So it isn't just about a green utopia, or as what you'll see here on some of the photos later is, some people joke is the Chia Pets skyline of the city. It's not quite that easy. We just don't get to hydroseed this side of skyscrapers and have the green to grow. It takes a little bit of work. And really what this is about is infrastructure. And this is about pioneering a new age of infrastructure and reinventing American cities to really compete with the global economy and to compete regionally and to make improvements in our cities that are sorely needed. If we go back and look at our infrastructure in the United States, and I think there's been a number of press releases by ASC over the year and recently in the last year, water, wastewater, and other infrastructure, roads and highways and bridges, are in sore need of repair and disrepair in a lot of places. They're collapsing. And we're scoring F's, D's, D minuses, and C's. If those were your kids, you'd be putting them in some kind of remedial class. And you would be definitely punishing them or doing something to get the scores up. Unfortunately, we tend to ignore it because in the utility infrastructure game, we really don't want to tell people there's a crisis. We don't want people to worry. And we want people to continue to take for granted the modern miracle that they have every day when they turn on their tap and flush their toilet. And if you want to know what kind of challenge this is, I want you to just take a day without any planning. Wake up and maybe your iPhone app will tell you to do it. And today will be your day that you don't use the water in your house to pretend that you couldn't. Or today would be the day you can't flush your toilet or take a shower. The minute that happens, you will start to understand how much this is worth, and it actually might be worth a little more than your Comcast bill or your cell phone bill. But until people get over that, well, we have to start teaching people about the value of infrastructure and engage the public in a dialogue about what it's going to take to move to this new age of infrastructure. So we've had the space race. We've been a leader in space technology. We've been a leader in computer technology and the whole biomedical scene. But really, where we need to do some pioneering and the new age is coming about is in our infrastructure, in our cities, and our communities. If we can figure out how to redevelop and reinvent our infrastructure, that will redevelop and reinvent our cities and communities, and hopefully help us plan out how we're going to grow our communities so that we're not eating up good farmland and cutting down good trees, so that we can continue to develop in a social, economic, and sustainable way that benefits everybody. So when you think about the presentation today, think about how does this turn into jobs? How does this create opportunities for new businesses? How does this create opportunities for people to think about? And when you look at the presentation today, don't just think about, oh, these are the only tools. We are just starting to develop the toolbox of reinventing infrastructure in the United States. And think about it in terms of this may be the early version of the computer. So this may be your Commodore 64 right now, but eventually there'll be an iPhone version of your infrastructure at some point. And so we need to think about how we're going to do that and look at what's going on. So I'm going to click through. All right, this is the city of Philadelphia, and when I make a point about infrastructure, infrastructure affects how a city develops. We thought through our use of infrastructure at the turn of the century, that we could do anything. We could bend nature's will to our desires. And so we created these wonderful square grid patterns that were very efficient for reasons that were chosen at the time in the 1800s and 1900s. And by doing that and bending nature to our will and all the pollution that we created in the city, we took wonderful streams because they were so polluted, they were typhoid and cholera cesspools, and we encapsulated them into the sewers to protect the public health of the citizens, thus eliminating an incredible amount of natural resource opportunity. And those are the sewers that you see now where those streams are. And all that's left is a little bit of it. And this, back in the 1800s and 1900s, was a great modern miracle, a great step forward in public infrastructure, and people come from all around to see the water and wastewater infrastructure in the city of Philadelphia and how to really make a city. Well, 100 years later, this creates a problem. We have 16 billion gallons of sewage overflowing from our rivers, into our rivers and streams from the city's combined sewer system. And this is an example of how we redid this a century ago. The performance requirements were different. The social needs were different. The impetus at the time was different. A rapidly growing city needed to cover up those streams, and you can see the city being built over top of it, so we can make that nice grid. And we put the stream into that channel. This is Mill Creek in Lower Marion Township, the same creek that's being put in the channel down below. This is where it enters that wonderful picture of that sewer system. And it actually goes down to a wastewater plant. Not so sustainable that a wonderful creek now goes into a city sewer, is mixed with sewage, and has to go through a wastewater plant where electricity and energy is used to treat it. But this was the turn of the century. We were bending nature to our will. In doing so, we also created inadvertent things that would happen 50 to 100 years later, like dumping grounds. Because outfalls aren't wonderful places to be at, because they aren't places that people care about because they may smell, they may be dangerous or inhospitable. Now they become dumping grounds. So we have to rethink how we're going to do this. We really need to take a page from nature. Instead of bending nature to our will, we really need to think about how we can mimic nature and try to lean a little bit back the other way and try to get something back. So instead of the typical row home neighborhood that you see in Philadelphia, how do we reinvent that and address the water quality issues of the estuary and help make improvements? But not just water quality. How do we create habitat for other things like birds, etc.? How do we try to do something in a way that reduces heat island effects, reduces energy use, improves the quality of life, and improves the property values? Well, this is one of those approaches. And we don't need to study whether or not these attract birds with government money, as mentioned earlier today. But we have a lot of tools right now that we can use. Pervious paving is a technology that's developing, and people are getting better at it every day in cities. Planting a tree. I don't think we need to go to China to have a tree made and have someone from China come here to plant a tree. These are homegrown jobs that can be created, and we can take underemployed and unemployed people and put them to work very quickly on these projects. And all along with this, there comes the jobs of horticulturists, botanists, landscape architects, engineers, inventing green roofs. We've seen, since the green roofs come out, there have been multiple iterations on that technology. In fact, we just saw a presentation last week of a company that has a technology that isn't necessarily plant-like material, but it's artificial material that acts like it. It's almost like a giant sponge. And so it's very interesting. A lot of technologies are evolving for blue roofs. Stormwater reuse with the rain barrel, not just the rain barrel, but cisterns in buildings. This stuff is starting to catch on as we change how the paradigm of a water wastewater utility is done and how it's operated. And so this is some of our toolbox, same stuff many of you have worked very hard on doing in your local communities. Many of you spend time on monitoring, and really a lot of the work that you're going to see here today is really the culmination of a lot of the work that you guys have put in through your monitoring, through your studies, through your projects, through your grants. Because when we started doing Clean Waters, Green Cities, oh gosh, 12 years ago, it feels much shorter, but I guess it wasn't. We actually started talking about these concepts to people in city government and management. And if it wasn't for a lot of the work that you folks did piloting some of these projects, we literally were laughed out of the room in many of the cases proposing these technologies. And in some cases, I remember one senior official saying to me, green roofs, aren't they mythical like unicorns? And I wish I could talk to that person today. But, you know, these are the kinds of things that happen because of the people in this room. And we have so many different technologies. These are just a few. But it's also about the money. Green is about green. And if we went with the traditional infrastructure approach and used the same approach to designing water and sewer infrastructure that we've been using for 100 years, used the same performance requirements, thought about it the same way, and didn't integrate it into a larger infrastructure concept, we would be doing something that I just think is absolutely awful, which is we'd be spending money in the city to dig a big hole in the ground and drive a tunnel around the city, drive a tunnel boring machine around the city. And just so you know, where that money would go is to several specialized firms or corporations that do this work internationally. It wouldn't go into jobs in the Philadelphia region. Probably wouldn't even go into jobs in the United States of America. These are companies from across the pond. And so we would not be paying for anything that would be homegrown, maintained, and operated. It would suddenly all be outsourced, and that's not really a good way. And it would cost us $8 billion with a B. Green Cities Clean Water employs people locally. It comes up, it pushes for innovation and new ideas, and it pushes $2 billion into the local economy. And this is an approach that can be used in many other communities at a different scale. So if we look at a city and we look at it above the ground and below the ground, you see your typical water and sewer pipes. That's all fine and dandy. We could keep investing in this. We can keep investing in a high carbon footprint, high energy, highly manicured, highly impervious environment with a lot of heat island effect. where we can think about how to integrate transportation infrastructure, community needs for green space, needs for open space, improved school spaces, and other opportunities that would allow us to do something a little different. Now, this gets a little Chia Pet-ish, so don't get too concerned. One of our biggest challenges to doing this is I show these pictures, and I've actually been trying to get our people to do the renderings to scale them back, because what happens is when we design a green street in the city, we show this rendering. Well, those trees are much older than they are when they get planted. So when people see this and then they kind of get that Charlie Brown Christmas tree that goes in first, you know, we've been trying to increase the caliper of the trees to about 3 inches that we plant, but these are like 6 inches at this point and a fuller canopy. And so, you know, and sometimes the plants go in on the curbs and they're plugs and they got to grow in. And as anybody knows, as a gardener, you know, it takes 2 seasons for things to really kick in. And so the public has a different expectation. So we've been working on that marketing angle, I think is the way to explain it. But you can see there are many different ways we can approach this design of a street. And you got to remember, we have water pipes that go back as far as 1829. We have sewer pipes going back into the 1800s. They do need replaced. And when we go in to replace them, we can do something like this. So green infrastructure really is community infrastructure. And it involves everybody. And it's an evolution. You know, we aren't going to do a revolution here. And it's been a 12-year evolution to get to this point, and it's going to continue to evolve. And there are going to be some technologies that create a revolution in this area. We work with all the different city agencies, other public and private landowners, the development community, non-for-profits. But the one person that we don't really mention here is businesses. And I think that we should call them out a little more. Is really, most of the innovation is going to come from businesses, from the private sector. People that have a financial motivation to get involved in this. And if they can do something good while returning a profit, that's great. But there's a lot of really fun and rewarding things that happen. From the work that many of you do, you know there's nothing like going out to a community event where they're doing the tree plantings. They're actually doing tree trenches and planting trees at the Greenfield Elementary School here. There's community members involved in our plantings at Columbus Square, in the rec center in the park in Columbus Square in South Philly. Yes, you can do green infrastructure even in South Philly. There will come a day when Eagles fans will all understand what green infrastructure is. But you can also do things that are a little beyond us typical engineer types where we draw straight lines and we like to make everything neat. The artist types get involved, and this is at Springside School. And you can see this if you look these kinds of approaches up online. There's a lot of art being included in stormwater management now and really making it something more beautiful, make it bigger than just a typical, you know, I can design something but it's not really pretty. So these people do a much better job than me. This is Liberty Lands. This is an example of an open space that actually manages stormwater. But that little area that I showed you back there, this is the stage that they use when it's not raining. And they come out from the neighborhood and have jam sessions. And so, you know, you never thought that green infrastructure and bioretention and detention basins could be your platform for your community jam session, but it is. This is a project that just happened this fall. We went into a couple blocks of West Philadelphia, and we actually built downspout diverters with community volunteers and flow-through planters. We can't really infiltrate in that neighborhood, but you can see a lot of this event people that live around there say, wow, it's much quieter now because the pores muffle the sound. The kids love it because they don't have to wipe the pavement down after it rains. They can play in a rainstorm without impeding their basketball game. Also, this means rethinking how we look at our infrastructure. The traditional engineering means that we go and we would put a sewer interceptor at the lowest point where gravity can pull it right along a creek. And then we pipe all our stormwater into the creek, and then the creek starts to erode. And if you looked on an overhead map, over a very short period of time, the creek moved 20 feet to the right and basically unearthed our interceptor, our brick interceptor. Then it'll collapse, and the creek will go into it, and it'll cause all kinds of problems. This is not uncommon if you go out into any area in any suburb. You'll see the same thing. But it also means natural channel stream design, and that area where that sewer is now protected. We could have went in and rip-rapped and gabiioned it, but instead we tried to create an area for habitat. And we're looking at miles and miles of this in the city right now. In fact, we have a 5-acre stormwater treatment wetland at Wise's Mill going in, plus the whole stream reconstruction of Wise's Mill and Cathedral Run occurring, actually it's bids, so I guess they're starting it soon. The job trailer's out there. So this requires a lot of data to be collected, a lot of things we need to learn. This is kind of like that rinse, lather, repeat. We have to study, plan, implement, and evaluate everything we do to make sure that we're doing a good job with the public's money and that we're getting something back. Our idea of the triple bottom line benefit is from our studies on the improvements from social and economic point of view, not just straight up compliance, is that for every dollar we invest in green infrastructure, the public will see a $2 return. And that's really where we're going with this. And this ties in very well to Mayor Nutter's initiative to be the greenest city in America, the GreenWorks program, and all the community support behind it. Also, this ties in very well to our initiatives for stormwater. In 2006, we significantly upgraded the stormwater regulations in the city, and many people said this will kill development. People will not develop in the city of Philadelphia because of these stormwater regulations. People didn't realize that they were the same as the suburbs, but that we were just enforcing them for once and actually making sure that these things were getting built and they were equivalent to what would be required in the suburbs. We also enabled a whole new set of stormwater billing that just went online in July. We converted our commercial-based billing for stormwater over from a meter-based system to a parcel-based impervious cover-based fee system. That means the parking lots that weren't paying a stormwater bill, that didn't have a meter, they get a bill. That means that the large, tall buildings in Center City that use a lot of water, that paid a large stormwater bill, that were unfairly subsidizing those large, sprawling areas out in the city, they would have their bill go down, and the people that were being subsidized would have to pay their fair share. And by offering a credit system associated with that stormwater billing, if you manage that stormwater, if you manage that first inch, like we require in our regulations for new development in the city, you can get a credit on your stormwater bill. And we've actually had people looking at this. And it also allows people that are managing stormwater to meet the regulations realize that there's going to be a financial benefit. A lot of universities are getting smarter. They've started thinking about how to mix these two together and say, hey, well, not just my water bill, why don't I go for the trifecta here and the triple play and try to do something with the stormwater and reuse it to flush the toilets so I use my less water and I get a lower water and sewer bill. And they're really trying to lower all three bills. Now that may be counterintuitive and some people in my utility yell at me for not selling as much as my product, but I think in the end it makes us more efficient, and I'd rather us be more efficient than be wasteful. And we even have an online program where people can go online and see, as customers, what's going on with these stormwater bills. They can pull up any parcel in the city and see the bill now and what it's going to look like between now and 2013. So they can start planning out what to do. Innovation occurs in many ways. 1 acre of the city on top of the Pico building at 23rd and Market is a green roof now. Who would have thought that 10 years ago? We have developers like Rag Flats and Onion Flats incorporating their own green roofs at small residential construction scale, incorporating stormwater reuse, trying to link water with energy. And maybe how do I take that stormwater or that wastewater and reuse it for energy. We actually have people looking into proposing sewer geothermal with some of their projects. Now, this is just an example of the green roofs in the city. And going back to 2006, before our regulations, I would say we probably only had 4, maybe 5 green roofs, and they were very small, very, very small. The dots, the larger the dot in red, the larger the green roof that's been constructed, and the green dots are the dots that are being proposed for green roofs that are under construction now. And what you'll see is throughout the city, specifically in Center City and West Philadelphia, University City area, even up into North Philly, there's a lot of green roofs. Now, if we actually went and looked on Google Earth, most of these tend to be institutional areas. They aren't city areas. These are all privately owned and operated as compared to other cities. We only have 1 city-owned green roof on the free library. The rest are all by private developers. And if we look at Center City here, you can see the zoom in. Let's see if it zooms in a little more for you. You can get a feel for the change in the skyline of the city if you're going to be up on top of City Hall at some point. It's going to start looking different. And as this changes, as we get more of these, we're going to start seeing a change when you look at Philadelphia from Google Earth. And right now we have 40, 50 green roofs in the city proposed and constructed. We're going to be probably up into the high 60s, and we're definitely in the top 5 in the United States for green roof constructed area, hoping to be number 1. Our mayor wants us to be number 1. So there's a lot of work to be done here, and we still have more opportunities. So we're working on a citywide transformation. This is that includes how we redo a street. Planting street trees with the inlets tied into trenches full of gravel to feed those trees so that they're live. I'm actually taking money to buy a camera that's infrared so I can take a photo of these trees to see if they're doing evapotranspiration. If they're not, that means this isn't working. We're actually really caring about the living system because that's a critical, important component. And this is Baltimore Pike and Yeadon. Same design. Underneath here is a huge gravel trench. And this is some of the pictures of the construction of that tree trench. We also are looking at all these new technologies. Porous concrete sidewalks, porous pavement. And our guinea pigs are our rec centers and other city properties right now, but we expect these to be much more widespread in the future. When I met with the people from our rec centers, and when we first had to do stormwater management regulations, and we were talking about bioretention with them, in 2006, the city's idea of how to redesign and rebuild a recreation center was, they said, for schools and rec centers, they said, this design, it has to be designed like a reverse prison, was the mentality of the architecture and the engineering behind a school and a rec center, a place of learning and wonder for children. So, how do we rethink that? How do we try to do that so it's not a reverse prison? And so, what we try to do is try to include greening elements and these new technologies and educational opportunities for the kids in the schools to be involved in seeing these things. This is an example of the free library. But Waterview Rec Center, downspout disconnect with just a simple infiltration trench with some plants on top of it. And people will learn from it. This is an area at our forensic center with bioretention. Open spaces, Heron Playground, bioretention, porous pavement basketball courts. The keynote thing you're going to see in Philadelphia everywhere as we go through the next couple of years is it's going to be the city of porous pavement basketball courts. We're debating how to do porous pavement tennis courts, but the tennis people have certain issues with the way that the porous pavement's laid out. But basketball, they love porous pavement basketball courts. We can't make them fast enough. And pretty much any time you see a basketball court being built in Philly, it's going to be porous pavement. So these are the kinds of things we're doing. And it's incorporating green space. Wow, there's trees and everything. It's not a reverse prison. Taking stormwater from up on the streets, bringing it down through in these nice-looking step pools to manage stormwater in vacant areas of our parks that really aren't being heavily used. So when it rains, the stormwater goes there, it infiltrates, and when it's not raining, you can still go have a picnic. Now, this is kind of your nuclear winter photograph that we love to have, which is, you know, these old brown sites, and there's a rec center here. Look at all that pavement. It feels like a reverse prison, doesn't it? It feels like some kind of prison setting, doesn't it? But this is a place where they're going to build a school and a rec center, and they're actually built it. This was the plan that we came up with the other city agencies for this area in Philadelphia. There's a sports field. There's green streets. These are actually green streets with tree trenches being built all along here. Rain gardens, geothermal wells, underground stormwater detention, porous pavement, cisterns, underground detention, green roofs. You know, you'd think you were somewhere else other than Philadelphia. Definitely not the place we saw earlier. But it's being built, and it is built, and it's being constructed. And these are what you call green anchors. There's a critical mass of green infrastructure being created that changes the look and feel of several city blocks. This also spurs on development. Developers tend to take the lead on some of these projects, and we're actually partnering now with developers where they want to build a development, we want a green street, we'll build the green street around their development as they're constructing their development. And this is the kind of stuff that we're trying to do, is have a more natural environment for kids to learn in. Now, I promised I would be done, and you can ask questions, but I'll leave it like this. This is what the city looks like briefly right now, I think a year ago, with an aerial photo of the city skyline. Now, someday, it would be nice if it was a little more like this. Maybe not quite so Chia Pet-like, but you know, and there are some practical issues that we have to overcome. But how do we get a little more like that and make the city a viable social, a viable economic, and a sustainable place so that people can come and live and really have a high quality of life and actually reinvent the American city. This is the new thing that we should be doing. As Americans, we have a pioneering spirit. The frontiers are right here in front of us. We don't need to go out to space. We don't need to go to the northern pole. We don't need to go to the South Pole. Just step out in front of you on your sidewalk, look inside your cities. If you want to do something huge, reinvent the American city. And that will protect the rest of the watershed, because if the people are moving here, they're not moving up and cutting down trees and putting in more roads and doing all the other things that are happening in other parts of the watershed. And this is really how we need to think about, is leveraging existing infrastructure, renewing it, rebuilding it, and reinventing it for the future to make this country a better place and make it more competitive. Thank you. Any good questions?
I have a quick question first. Do you have something against Chia Pets?
Well, I like to preempt it, because at a lot of presentations we give this, and one community member, a crankier gentleman, once said, "It looks like we just did a bunch of Chia Pets." And you know, I kind of ever since that, and since some of the Charlie Brown trees went up after people had the really nice renderings of the Garden of Eden, I really want to make sure that we temper people's expectations and that it isn't an overnight transformation. And it does take a while for the trees to grow, but it's a lot quicker for a tree to grow than the 20 years to build a tunnel. And so, you know, we've been working on that, and I don't have anything against Chia Pets, but if we made one, maybe we could make one for Howard. That would be nice.
My question's regarding vandalism. Basically, what are you guys doing to try to get the community to try to watch out for things, or to help prevent the vandalism of the tree trenches and just the different things that you're planting?
Okay, vandalism. Wow, that's, well, the reverse prison discussion. This comes up a lot in our green infrastructure, and I'd say we don't have all the answers now, but we've been working with, basically, if you engage the community that's there and have them involved in planting, really, they have to really work hard to break a 3-inch caliper tree, and usually a lot of the protection around it is pretty solid stuff. I mean, you would have to get heavy-duty equipment to take it apart. So the only places where you really have issues is maybe in the planter areas, the bioretention where you have plants where people might pull them out. But by and large, people don't really want to take the time in the middle of a busy street with lots of people around to try to pull out a small bush or a plant. If anything, they try to hang on a branch after the Phillies win the World Series and break a branch. or things like that. So by and large, we really haven't seen the vandalism impacts from some of this. Now, I've been working on a pilot project with the rain barrel system at the East Falls train station, and that's been problematic because we've installed 8 rain barrels, and we've done different configurations. We didn't want to use metal that people would want to steal for scrap, and then we went with plastic, and you have to worry about freezing issues. But we've had to deal with the vandalism issue and how would you design a system to address that. And I think we're still getting there. But by and large, I'd say it's very rare that we come across a vandalism issue, especially with the trees. People are pretty protective of it. But we also have to be careful. If somebody says they do not want a tree in front of their house, and we know about this from talking to our parks people, people have actually hired contractors to go across the street to somebody else's house and cut down a tree that they don't like. And so there's a generational debate in areas of South Philly where there's an older community that does not like trees, and there's a community that does like trees. There's literal debates and verbal arguments about that. And so we have to work with people, and really it's a community outreach effort first. But we can always switch. We don't have to put a tree in there. It can go right into the gravel trench under the ground, and we can just leave porous main. We can skip and have a little bit of a gap tooth on the trees if we need to, if somebody's very militantly opposed to a tree.
Hi. How do you deal with the maintenance and the ongoing oversight? Is it through the Public Works Department? Is it through the Parks Department? I can understand green roofs might be individual private property owners, but
in the public right-of-way, I assume that's what you're talking about. It's actually a mixture of teams right now. We have a consulting group going through and studying some of these and documenting the maintenance needs and what's happening. 1, so that we can figure out what is the maintenance need. 2, so we can figure out how to redesign these for version 2, 3, 4, and 5 and make them better to address maintenance and keep it low. But really, in the end, I think this is going to be a mixture of contract ops. And we've been exploring opportunities. For example, we have different city districts in the city. Center City District already has guys going around with little sweepers, and they already maintain street trees and things like that. These are designed, they're pretty simple. Those same types of crews could be augmented to do that work. The things that require our equipment are really the inlet cleanouts. We do 76,000 inlets a year, cleaning out those inlets. They're the same inlets. We're not adding more inlets. So that's not more work for us. That's the same work we can do. But dealing with the trees, the tree maintenance, keeping up the look of the landscaping, that can be done through any of the University City District, Center City District, or any community group. We've actually partnered on the one curve with the tree trenches. We partnered with a community organization, and they're maintaining it. So we're looking at a variety of models, and I think in certain areas it'll work, but we found that the community wants to be involved. And if we can employ somebody on that block that's unemployed to take care of some of the trees and some of the plantings, hey, that's something that's good for the community. There's someone in the back, Andrew, I think.
Hi, Chris, thanks. I think Philadelphia does a great job. CWD is really at the forefront of this. Is there any interest from other communities or other cities in the area? I would think, the Pacific Northwest, yes, but maybe Mid-Atlantic that could use your ideas and maybe get a groundswell, not just a critical mass in Philly, but in the region.
Okay, the question was, is there any other cities involved in this? Well, first of all, I'll be honest. We shamelessly steal from everybody. And if you have a good idea that I see today, we'll probably go back and steal it. But really, we build on the work that Prince George's County, Maryland did. A lot of the work in Maryland out there. A lot of the work in Portland and Seattle. But we've really kind of made it our own. Now, what we've seen is Washington, D.C. has approached us. They've spent considerable time learning how we do our stormwater regulations, learning about our impervious cover billing, and they're moving in that direction. New York City has spent, I don't know how many times visiting us now to talk about these approaches and ideas. And I think there are many other cities that are already incorporating it. City of Wilmington's incorporating some of these ideas into their projects. And so, I think many cities are starting to move on that, but budgets are tight. And this is new, and people are worried, about with the change, and where are you going to come up with the money? And it really requires for communities that are just getting over that hump, some of that seed money. We started this 12 years ago, and the state agencies, our state of Pennsylvania, EPA, Congress, whether it's earmark, which is a dirty word or whatever, we've been lucky to get some appropriations, being able to get the seed money to try these things out and show that they aren't mythical and that they're not going to cause the destruction of the planet and that it's actually a good thing. And when the politicians finally see a customer come up to you that uses 4-letter words to tell you how happy they are about something you did instead of how unhappy they are, the light bulbs click on. And it's really a stepwise approach, a baby step approach. You just don't go out there and roll this out overnight. We spent 10 years of groundwork just getting to this point where we could really get over that hump. Now, I think in other cities and other situations, they might be able to move a lot quicker than we can. But it's very doable, and I think they're paying attention to it. Oh, there's a question over there.
Ask a question on behalf of the folks who are joining us by webcast in Reading. Someone is asking, why do people oppose trees? Is it a tree litter issue or a sidewalk access issue or what?
Coming from the country in rural Pennsylvania, I was blown away by that. But really what we learned is it's a litter issue. They're worried about cleaning up the leaves. They're also, the one issue is some people have had exposure where there's so few trees in parts of the city, where one tree is the tree on the block. And what happens is all the birds come to that one tree. And so then if you have a car there or if you're the resident living at that house, the birds leave a lot of mess. And so they just want the tree cut down. But if you had a bunch of trees, there wouldn't be 500 birds sitting in that tree right in front of your house because it's the only tree for like 3 blocks on a really hot day. So we've learned how to educate people about that, and we also have seen that it can be somewhat of a generational thing. If you grew up in South Philly your whole life and you're 70 years old and you've never seen a tree, you may not want one there.
Being someone who grew up in South Philly my whole life, one of the other issues that I hear from the older generation, put a tree on
Heaves the sidewalk.
tears up the sidewalk, and then you have liability and responsibility for fixing it.
That was another major one, the heaving of the sidewalk with street trees, and that's a general one. The good thing with and that's a really good point, I'm sorry I forgot that one. And that's a really good point. What we've made sure we do with our designs is by creating the tree trench in the area for the roots to grow, we're not forcing the tree to have to go up through the sidewalk. And we're carefully monitoring those designs. But typically the designs that we're creating are creating ways for the roots to not force themselves up in the sidewalk. We're creating the space. And we're also picking trees that typically aren't associated with those kinds of situations. So we're trying to be selective about the plants. But that is a liability issue that people always bring up. But really, it takes a while for them to get to that point about the sidewalk issue. They start with litter and debris and bird mess, and then finally they talk about the sidewalk. But it is a legitimate issue.
Over from this side of the room, I've been over on the other side for a while.
I just had a comment. I'm teaching now in urban ecology and course at Temple, and people are very, very excited about this program. These are freshman students, and they're going around seeing the green roofs, and many of them are telling me that their parents are tired of living in the suburbs and want to move to Philadelphia so they can have fun in their old age and not take care of a huge yard out in the country. So that is actually helping to create a sustainable city, and I commend you on your work.
There was
Another question? Here we go.
I've been hearing about your award-winning children's gardens in Philly, and I was wondering, are you planning to expand environmental education programs in the schools?
We already have a significant amount of environmental education through our park, through our partners in the park, who do a lot of outreach with the schools and include them in through with the Clean Cities Green Water program. We are looking to strengthen our relationships with the school district and continue to include these opportunities, specifically arranged around demonstration projects. Like at Greenfield, they actually do have an area where they plant plants that the kids can actually learn what different vegetables are and pick them out and eat them and do all kinds of things. So we're really trying to think about when we go into a school, how do we integrate that into a curricula with the teachers and get them the training that they need. The teachers are more than excited. Wissahickon Charter School has one of these. Greenwich Charter School has a green roof. There's the Friends Center has a green roof. There's a number of these schools that are integrating this into their active curriculum, and we're just trying to figure out how to support it as best we can. They're moving faster than we can keep up. That's really the good problem to have. I think there was some.
Maybe one more.
I'm Marianne at Sylvania Nursery. We grow native Pennsylvania trees. Is there somewhere on your website where I can find out which species are working? Are you working with natives? And the second question was, I know that PHS works with you, the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society. Is that part of that Million Tree Project too? Is they going in the city?
Okay, you got a couple of different things. Okay, so let's start with the first one. The tree specs are different depending on the nature and design of the project. So for example, if we have a bid design for street trees for a tree trench project, for example, on JFK, if you ever go to 30th Street Station and you step out of the train, there's a large, wide swath, 4 lanes wide, down John F. Kennedy Boulevard into the back end of Drexel. It's a wasteland. We're actually doing a massive green street down through there, narrowing it down to 1 lane on each side, and tree planting. We actually came up with a series of specs and laid out them. So every job has a different series of specs depending on the nature of the design. If we're in a row home neighborhood, and I'll say North Philly, a tight area like North Philly, Northeast Philly, or South Philly, we might have a different spec on the trees because we don't want them to get so wide, so big. We don't want them. We have sidewalk concerns that we have to be careful about. But we should have most of that on our website for different projects. If we aren't, on phillywatersheds.org. If not, drop me an email and we'll send you the list. But we work very closely with Parks and PHS, and I think this isn't set in stone. I think we're going to have to pull a couple out after we see how they work and put some new ones in and really see how they work out. But we've been going for more of the city survivable species that can handle the heat, the air quality, and can also address a lot of the salt concerns from road salt runoff and are salt tolerant. And also we also have to deal with the issues of flowering and fruits and the pollen issues. And so we've been working very carefully with those two groups to select them, and we'll be experimenting more. But it's not like a very narrow range. We still have a pretty wide group, but we're not going to be doing silver maples or anything like that. So, and we definitely don't do invasives. Jessica, well, Jessica, a question. Oh, 3 minutes, so I'll keep you from lunch.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I don't want to hold anybody up, but I have a question. With all the snow, and you had bump outs and things like that. So, and how have you gotten your public works people to get on board with this? And what about snow removal issues when you do those bump outs?
Well, okay, so that's a good question.
And salting.
Okay, so that was a good question, and I'll answer that question pretty quickly. Snow, those ones you saw at Columbus Square, which is a very tight neighborhood, a lot of difficulties with parking, and that's one of the other issues is giving up parking. Typically we do these where the fire hydrants are, where it's illegal to park. We try to avoid taking, our goal is to never take parking away and actually try to get some parking back for people if we can. And so and especially in tight neighborhoods. Columbus Square, we had that hole, we call it the hole, it was dug and we were ready to plant, but winter hit. And that's when we had 72 inches of snow last year. And it was actually considered a great thing from the public works point of view because they were able to dump all the snow into that area. And they were like, we love these bump outs. It's a great place for us to put the snow in the winter. And we actually have a project up at Queen Lane in front of our plants about 2 blocks from my house that I walk over to check on. And it's under construction. And they put some of the trees in, but they're not done until the spring. And the bump outs are there, kind of like the curved bump outs. And one of the things I was worried about is because they weren't there before the snow, that the snow plows might not realize it and clip them. But luckily, the contractors are pretty good. They've been putting up cones and barriers so that they can see where the edges of these are as they start plowing. And once they get familiar with where they are, the crews, once they see where a tree is moved in, they know the tree is a really good demarcation point. They know to take a couple inches off there. And most of the time, if you haven't seen the city after the recent snowstorm, I mean, they're just trying to keep a basic lane open. They're not looking to get within a foot of, they're not going to get within a foot of the curb. They're going to stay away from there. But it has created significant opportunities for snow removal that weren't there during some of these heavy snows. There's places for it. And also, In terms of the salt, we use salt-tolerant species so that the road salt doesn't kill them, and we've learned that from Portland and other people.
We are very fortunate to have such innovative and collaborative partners as we do with the Philadelphia Water Department. And I wanted to point out, too, that we do have here at the conference outside at the table, we have some of the materials that the partnership has worked with the Water Department, including the commercial guide to stormwater management, which is we're trying to help some of the commercial properties navigate through changes in the stormwater system there. We also are going to be working with the Water Department on a display at the Philadelphia Flower Show. That'll be March 5th through the 13th. That'll highlight some of the cool new techniques that you saw here. So thank you, Chris.
We hope you enjoyed this presentation by the Partnership for the Delaware Estuary. For more information, visit delawareestuary.org or call 800-445-4935. We produced this program in the studios of Professional Podcasts in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, on the web at professionalpodcasts.com. For everyone at the Partnership for the Delaware Estuary, this is Steve Lubetkin. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you out there on the net. Take good care.